What up, everybody? BMF Season 4, Episode 4 starts out with Meech, Terry, and Loco in Mexico, arriving at a convenience store, dehydrated, with dirt all over their shirts, looking for water. At this point, the police arrived, and he walked in looking for pork rinds. So the pig was coming into the convenience store, looking for pork rinds, when Loco attacked him, and Meech and Terry jumped the other cop when he came in. Then they cuffed him and stripped him down to their underclothes, and Loco told them to dance in Spanish, while him and Meech shot at their feet, while Terry only wanted to get his snacks and get up out of there. Then they drove off in what I believe was the cop's Jeep, and Loco told them that the ranch isn't far. At this point, the narrator said power is the most intoxicating and corruptible shit on the planet. You gotta know when to flex it to come out on top, or you'll end up hurting the wrong people. And that set the stage for this episode, set around the battle over power, not only in the streets, but in the music industry also. Whether it's Meech and Terry trying to make their way into the music industry, Jay Pusha and his agenda to rise in power in the drug game, Trell, who's clearly intoxicated with power, or even Markeisha, who's trying to step into her own power and make her own way. And concerning hurting the wrong people, this episode we saw how the game has hurt the wrong people in the lives of Meech and Jay Pusha, with Carter losing his fingers, and now he's lost his baseball career, and Meech leading Terry into the game, and how he ended up getting shot and messing up his eye. And even B. Mickey, who now has to live his life with the remorse of killing Kato, who was pregnant with his child. Then we see Meech, Purdy, and Duffy at Duffy's home studio in Atlanta, and Meech lets Purdy know that they're starting their own label, and Purdy lets Meech know that she wants to start rapping, but Trell wouldn't let her, and also that there would be issues with signing her because she's under contract with Trell. Lucille was talking to her cousin Estelle, who was wearing Lucille's fur coat, and Lucille wants to go on welfare, but needs Charles to leave the house first. Lucille was planning on selling the fur coat that Meech gave her, but Estelle told her to keep the fur coat and sell the wedding ring instead, and Lucille told her that was a good idea. She also told Estelle that they're still not accepting money from Meech and Terry, and I do wonder if that'll ever change, because that's been their rule since season 1, either though we did see Charles start to accept money from Terry last season. Terry brought in B. Mickey this episode, but before he told him anything, he made him strip down to his boxers to make sure he wasn't wearing a wire. And Terry sent B. Mickey and Hoop to keep an eye on Markeisha while he was in St. Louis. Terry met up with LaWanda, and we find out that she's not doing hair anymore. She now has a job at City Hall. And Terry gave LaWanda a bag of money, and he asked her to start holding money for him. Now Meech has a new warehouse in St. Louis to run office out of, and Loco told Meech that they can't have any more kind of problems, that the cartel wants money for the move and the people who died at the airport. Keep it in mind, last episode, Loco mentioned Pablo Escobar's death, so this could be talking about the cartel moving and setting up shop in Mexico. In the car, when Terry arrived in St. Louis, he was upset that he didn't get to talk to Loco also, because he wanted to set things straight about not trusting Jay Pusha. Then Meech let Terry know that in order for the music to work, that they were going to have to lean on Jay Pusha, and this would come into play at the end of the episode. But Terry wanted to use their own people from Detroit and St. Louis instead of using Pusha. Terry also let Meech know that they should find someone else instead of rebranding Purdy. So at this point, it definitely looks like Terry's right about both Jay Pusha and Purdy. When B, Mickey, and Hoop were following Keshia while Terry was in St. Louis, the first place they saw her go was the Detroit Department of Corrections to see Boom. But Keshia was there letting Boom know about Isaac Roberts and pressing him for more contacts, needing money, especially after the deal with Isaac Roberts fell through. But Boom got real paranoid about Isaac Roberts potentially getting caught up and said they had to wait until things cooled down. B. Mickey was in the car fidgety, and Hoop was annoyed, wondering why Terry didn't send him to do the job by himself. But later Hoop remembered how B. Mickey took out Kato to hold it down for the family. When B. Mickey revealed to Hoop that Kato was pregnant with his child at the time and that Aisha and his daughter are his second shot. Then we get an inside look at the life of Trell, living in a mansion with gold plaques on his walls, and he was dunking someone from the radio station underwater and forcing him to play his music every hour when Purdy walked in, and he let her know that he was going to rebrand her with a girl group. At this point, Purdy said that she had a top 10 hit and that she didn't want to be part of a girl group. The girls who's going to be in the group with her was at Trell's house naked doing coke. Trell then grabbed Purdy and let her know that he made her and that she's nothing without him. Very similar to Greenie and how he treated Angel in season 3. And at that point, Purdy asked Trell for a bump, and he was happy to give her some coke. So Trell uses coke as a way to keep control over Purdy, as well as the other artists around him also. Let me know who you think the character Trell is inspired by in the comments section. In St. Louis, we see Jay Pusha living large, spending money right and left, keeping in mind what Greenie said to Meech when he first saw Jay Pusha in season 3, that if he was a blind man, he could smell money. When at Jay Pusha's, Terry began to connect with Carter and ask him what they do in St. Louis other than video games. And that led to them going to a casino boat where they met up with Loco and he listened in on the business. Jay Pusha said they got people in Texas and New York that they can expand the pipeline into. Loco listened in with Meech calling him Unc, but Jay Pusha easily figured out who Loco was. At the casino boat, we got our first look at a Muslim group called the Moors, and they were picking on Carter because they have beef with Jay Pusha. But Carter was drunk and made a scene and got a ride home from Terry, when Terry and Carter began to bond over Terry's eye and Carter's hand. Both Carter and Terry learning to live with a disability that they weren't born with. And Carter's taking things especially hard because he can no longer play baseball. But I also have to ask the question, is Terry connecting with Carter intentionally because he knows that Jay Pusha is a snake and he could be going after his weakness, which is Carter? In this episode, we see Charles going on a date with Cecilia, only for her ex to show up causing problems, even punching Charles before Charles beat down her ex named Avery. And going back to the theme of power throughout this episode, Charles was definitely feeling a little power after beating down Avery. And because Avery punched Charles first, Charles should be good when it comes to any kind of charges from law enforcement. But did he kill Avery? Because if he did, that would definitely change things. And later in the episode, Charles told Lucille that he received a call and the tour with the Campbell brothers is back on, and he'll be leaving in a couple months. At this point, it was also shown that Lucille sold her wedding ring to the pawn shop for $1,000. Nicole now has a job working at Terry's restaurant. In this episode, we saw her hooking up with Worm from Terry's crew, who was sent to give Nicole rides to and from work. And Worm was already given this job because he was on thin ice with Terry for violating the dress code. And now he's hooking up with his little sister. Keeping in mind how Terry reacted in season 3 when he saw Nicole in the car with Breeze. And Wanda also warned Nicole that she was going to get somebody killed. Lucille sent B. Mickey a card with a note and a couple $1,000s to go towards his daughter's surgery from her church's benevolent fund. And the day after B. Mickey and Hoop saw Keshia going to visit Boom, they saw Keshia going on a date with Vince the cop. But again, it wasn't what it seemed because Markeisha was using Vince to get information about Isaac Roberts and left Vince on red. And later B. Mickey asked Hoop if he told Terry, and Hoop said it was the maddest he'd ever seen Terry. Then Hoop gave B. Mickey the money from Terry to pay for his daughter's surgery. When Meech and Terry got back to Atlanta, they let Purdy know that they got her into the Source Awards, and that was enough for Purdy to say she was going to sign with them and their record label that they're calling Stomping Ground Records. And Terry gave Purdy a chain, probably more than she's got from Trell, either though she has a top 10 record. At this point, Duffy went to Platinum Palace by himself, where he was being tracked by Detective Bryant, who got the drop that's where Duffy hangs out at. But Bryant didn't have any backup because the Red Dogs and Officer Hardy couldn't go with him to set up a parameter because they were working foot beats for the Olympics. Officer Hardy said the countdown has begun. So because of that, even though he had eyes on Duffy at Platinum Palace, Duffy has the drop on Bryant through Meech and spotted Bryant, who was getting a dance from Lucky. Easily the funniest scene from this episode. And Duffy got out of Platinum Palace while Bryant was distracted. And Bryant now knows that Duffy's wanted for murder back in Detroit, even though he's still trying to figure out his government name. At the Source Awards, Purdy was hitting bumps when Meech and them weren't looking, and they got to see several artists backstage in the VIP section, like Biggie, Faith Evans, the Wu-Tang Clan, Outkast, Suge Knight, Bone Thugs and Harmony, and they even talked to Left Eye Lopez for a second backstage. And before they could leave, Trell spotted Purdy, and Meech and Terry got into a confrontation with Trell and his people after the Source Awards. So Trell's not going to go away easy and will be a problem for Meech and Terry moving forward when it comes to working with Purdy. And the episode concludes with Jay Pusha meeting Loco at the airport and trying to backdoor Meech to get his own deal with Loco. Javier told Jay Pusha that he made a good impression moving the work fast and that they would be in touch with him. When they asked where Meech was, Jay Pusha said that Meech's head wasn't in the game, going back to Meech telling Terry if the music was going to work, then they would have to lean on Jay Pusha. So after everything that Meech and Terry went through with Loco in Mexico, we'll see if he remains loyal to them and tells him that Jay Pusha is trying to backdoor them, or will he make the move to go forward with backdooring Meech and Terry with Jay Pusha? And the episode concluded with Mobb Deep's Survival of the Fittest playing in the background, and the narrator saying, when you're in power, it feels like you can accomplish anything. And that's when the power paradox comes in. That sense of motherfucking self is the same shit that can lead to your demise. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.